the buyer from Urban Outfitters turned up, and she said, look, we really want to sell your stuff. We like it. It's really on line with the style and branding that we've got at Urban Outfitters, but you've got to have US distribution. And it was that moment was a make or break decision, kind of, do we do this or do we not do this? So I just said, give me 24 hours and we'll get US distribution.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Story of a Startup. Today, Jessica and I are meeting with Phil Wood, a former student at Carmela Ice Cream, who took his serial entrepreneur chops and opened up Brass Monkey Ice Cream in London and in Brighton. So join us as we hear about his journey, things that he's learned, and get to hear about a cool ice cream flavor. In the beginning, it was Jessica and I talking about Carmela, and going forward with each new episode we have, we're going to talk to some really amazing guests. So Jessica, do you want to give an introduction for the great guy that we have here with us today?
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here for our first official episode of the podcast. The pilot episode, we focused on my story as an entrepreneur, and a lot of that story was my experience with Carmela Ice Cream. And so it felt like a very natural transition into our first guest to invite my friend Phil Wood, who is the founder and owner of Brass Monkey Ice Cream based in London and Brighton, England. And Phil is actually someone who took one of my ice cream classes at Carmela years ago, and apparently I just learned the other day during the class decided he might want to do his own ice cream after maybe getting a little bit inspired on handcrafted ice cream in my class. So he actually went and did that, and that's what Brass Monkey is. And so it seemed like a perfect segue for us to hear about his story and his journey with that. And then also he can tell us about it more, but he is also a serial entrepreneur. So he has a lot of just other varied entrepreneur and startup experiences that we're hoping to have him share with us today.
Hey, thank you very much for having me on your very first podcast. I'm honored and thrilled. It's a pleasure to be here. I wish I had as good weather as you guys have got over there, but it's a bit grey and miserable in February London town. But yeah, let's get going. Let's get into it.
Yeah, so we heard a little bit about it from Jessica, but Phil, when you think about your story as an entrepreneur and where that really started, where does that, what's the first page of that journey for you? When did you know that you wanted to be your own boss? When did you realize that, you had a passion for entrepreneurship?
That's a really good question. I guess this started when I was a young boy, where I remember inheriting a load of old fishing gear, fishing rods and fishing reels and all the caboodle that goes along with fishing. I was never into fishing, but I got the word out quite quickly in my little village that there was a kind of a flash sale on fishing gear. I think fishing must have been a big thing back then. And I remember groups of people I didn't really know, slightly older kids coming around to my bedroom and buying all this fishing gear off me. And I had I probably had £2 worth of fishing gear, but back then that was a lot of money. I was like, yes, I like selling stuff. I came from a great family, but not an overly wealthy family. So basically, as a young teenager, I had to work. If I wanted something nice, I had to work for it. So delivered papers, delivered milk, worked in local stores. That whole thing of look, I want a new bicycle, then you're going to have to save up and buy your bicycle. That's the way it goes. So learned very quickly that, you get out what you put in, and if you want something, you're going to have to go and hustle for it. Roll on probably 8-9 years, and I ended up falling in love with photography and ended up getting a spot at a top photography school in London. I was from Leeds in the north of England, in the provinces, very, very different from the south of England, particularly back then. So I packed my bags and got accepted to this photography school and came down to London when I was 21, a bit later than normal, to do a degree in photography. Had 3 of the most amazing years of my life, and had a great time, met loads of great, wonderful people. A lot of them I'm still in touch with now. And because it was such a good photography school, we were kind of headhunted by a big travel guide publishers based in Germany, and they selected 20 people that they wanted to kind of test. 20 of us were tested, five of us were selected, and as soon as I graduated, I worked for these guys, going around the world taking photographs for travel guides, paper books. This is pre-digital, so old-fashioned camera with a bag full of 150 rolls of film and hitting different parts of the world and taking photographs, which was a kind of a dream job. So that's where I guess I became properly self-employed straight out of college. Roll on towards another few years. We started a good friend of mine who I shared a house with, and he was also one of the five photographers that was commissioned by these guys. We ended up publishing a few postcards. We had this idea about doing kind of arty postcards off the back of our photography work. And we started to, or I did mainly, drive them round to the galleries of London, the bookshops, and we set up a small business selling postcards. And it quickly transformed into greetings cards, into wrapping paper. We started to commission other photographers, other graphic designers, other illustrators. And we had this business that's kind of, oh wow, we're making some money out of this. And then we went international and we started trading in the US, which was fun. And yeah, that's kind of the early stages of me never really having time to have a proper job and just launching myself into my own thing.
So it seems like there's an element to always being, pretty action oriented, right? Being in the moment, following what your passions are, not getting caught up in, can I do it? Just starting to do it, right? And just seeing how it goes and where the momentum is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a firm believer in a few kind of key principles, which I now can look back on and reflect. But the passion that you mentioned's absolutely vital. There's so many people you meet that want to make a lot of money and they're trying to almost tick boxes in a spreadsheet in terms of how to go about doing that. If you're going to have a service or a product or something that you're going to put your energy behind, you've got to have passion for it. And the passion's not for the good times, the passion's for the bad times, because every business will have a downturn and a bad time and struggles. And you need that passion to keep you going in the bad times. It's easy when it's good. It's damn well hard when it's bad. And again, I'm a firm believer that the passion is there to give you that kind of extra push just to keep on going with things.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point because people get too focused on the high points and the goal and the milestones and all that. But then when you're in that moment where things are really low and hard, that's where you need to be stronger than ever.
It's just having that kind of grit. And if you believe in what you do, then it makes it that little bit easier just to stick by it and go, come on, let's kind of see this through. The other thing is, like you mentioned, Dominic, is just saying yes to things, particularly when you're younger and you want doors to open. There's so many times I've just said, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. I can make you that. You know, I can provide that service. A good example of this is when we had the greetings card business. We really wanted to get in with Urban Outfitters. This is in the mid 90s. And Urban Outfitters was like the holy grail in the US. It was a really cool, super slick stores. I'm not even sure if they're still about in the States, but they were huge then. And I had an agent that was selling small amounts for us in the New York area, and I went over to do a trade show at the Javits Center. It was like a big giftware show where people selling all their kind of knickknacks, and all the buyers turn up. And the buyer from Urban Outfitters turned up, who was a young lady, had a huge entourage with her. She had enormous buying power. Everybody wanted to kind of know her. And she ended up coming and sitting on the floor, cross-legged in front of this kind of 8 foot by 4 foot panel that I had with greetings cards and wrapping paper on. So I just sat down next to her cross legs and we just looked at it and kind of had a giggle. And she said, look, we really want to sell your stuff. We like it. It's really on line with the style and branding that we've got at Urban Outfitters, but you've got to have US distribution. And it was that moment was a make or break decision, kind of, do we do this or do we not do this? So I just said, give me 24 hours and we'll get US distribution. I had very good friends who were living in Dallas at the time, Richard and Kirsten, big shout out. And Richard was kind of doing a part-time job, and I called him up and said, "Hey, I need US distribution. Can we rent somewhere that we can ship a ton of greetings cards and wrapping paper to?" And he said, "Leave it with me." 12 hours later, Richard said, "I can rent a house for $150 a month in a poor area of Dallas, but it'll do for our distribution center." So I got back to the buyer at Urban Outfitters and said, "We're sorted. We've got US distribution." She was like, "Really?" Um, anyway, we signed a contract. We rented this house. It was really straightforward. So Richard would do kind of his part-time day job, and then we bought him a fax machine. We shipped over tons of greetings cards and wrapping paper to this house in a poor kind of Latino part of Dallas, and bought him a fax machine, and then the orders from our agents in the States kind of rolled in on the fax machine, and he would pack them up, call UPS at kind of 10 at night, and have these orders shipped out. So that's I tell that little bit of a story just to illustrate you some got to grab things, and by the horns and not let go. If there's an opportunity like that comes up, say yes.
Yeah, I like that. I'm imagining that, a house that you're renting for $150 a month is pretty like small. And so I'm imagining this like small residential home just bursting at the brim with packaging.
Well, I actually visited this house about a year later, and it wasn't as small as I thought it was going to be. It's actually quite nice. I slept in there for like 3 days. I'd done a trade show. I flew down to Dallas, and I thought I'll go and pack up some orders. But I had no idea where I was in Dallas. I'd never even been to Dallas before. And yeah, it worked. It worked really well. Um, but yeah, so again, that's just telling that story to illustrate the concept of being passionate and taking things. Don't be too hesitant about be on the fence. Sometimes you've just got to go. I think the hardest part of business is making a decision to either start a business or go for a certain aspect of your business. Once you decide to do something, then you can make a plan. You can think about it. You can strategize it. But I think making that decision seems to be the hardest thing for a lot of people.
Do you think in terms of selecting something to focus on, or deciding to do something and then to know you have to go forward with all those steps to actually enact it? Which part do you think is the hardest?
I don't know if there's too much of a difference between either of them. I think that decision making, whether it's a strategy that, like you say, that you need to enact on, I think it's just making a decision about which direction you're gonna go towards. A good example, another example of that is roll on to much more recently with Brass Monkey ice cream. COVID hit, and we were closed down like everywhere else, pretty much around the world. And I was in where I am now in East London, and realizing all the local stores were selling. Business was booming for these guys because they were essential in the UK. They were classed as essential services. So I very, very quickly, I'd never sold ice cream in pints other than through our parlors, and I decided to go down the wholesale route. And again, I acted on that decision very, very quickly because I thought we were going to go bankrupt. So I thought, right, we've got to do this. I've got to start getting the ice cream that I can carry on making ice cream and getting it into the stores. And we did that really quickly. We had a great graphic designer design packaging, and all the whole nutritional stuff and everything else. And I think we probably turned that around in 2 months from having that idea to go, okay, let's do it. Um, the comical thing is, 18 months later, I decided to stop completely doing that. But it helped us at a time when we needed it, when we couldn't open our ice cream parlors.
That's nice being able to pivot like that.
So I had a question about the greeting card business and how it sounds like that got really big quickly. I'm wondering about the timeline that was, and also what the original goal for that business was. Besides, you mentioned the idea to kind of pivot some of the photography to the cards, but then what was kind of the thoughts behind it at the initial beginning?
Again, this is mid 90s, so very much pre-digital anything really, and that whole stationery stores, bookstores, we dealt with Borders and Barnes and Noble, and the kind of UK equivalents. It was big business. Think I think it was £1 billion business in the UK, and it just tied in really nicely with being creative from a photographic point of view. And it became even more creative when we started to be involved in commissioning pretty well-known graphic designers and illustrators. So I saw a better business opportunity in having a greetings card business than I did working as a freelance photographer. I was kind of coming towards the end of my travel photography. The publishers were being cute and squeezing budgets, and it got to a point where it's like, "Oh, is this really worth it?" So it was a nice kind of segue from that into me being a young business person. I was in my mid-20s when this happened, so I was very naive. So the timeline was that business lasted for about 4 years, and the trajectory was very, very steep. I still see it as a success, but that business actually went into liquidation. And the reason being was we were approached by a huge chain of fashion stores in the UK called Topshop. They were in the States for a while. They're enormous. They don't exist anymore. But they approached us and they said, we're going to start selling greetings cards and other small giftware through our chain of hundreds and hundreds of stores. And their stores were big as well. They had enormous buying power, and their turnover was, enormous. But they had lots of conditions. They said, you're a small business. We need you to have these systems in place in order for you to be kind of a supplier for us. And they told us to jump, and we jumped. And stupidly, really, we had to gear up in terms of a bigger warehouse, more staff, lots of different kind of barcoding software. And the big deal was that they insisted that we had huge volumes in a warehouse to supply their demand without us having to kind of reprint every time they wanted an order. It needed to be turned around very quickly. So we went to our printers and said, "I've got good news, guys. We've got this enormous client. Instead of 100,000 units, we want 1,000,000 units." And they were like, "Woohoo!" So our average invoice total for an order was probably about £250. So what, 300 it'd have been $350 back then as an average invoice. Their first invoice was £110,000. And they said, we're going to do this every 10 weeks. So I was already choosing the color of my Porsche. I thought, that's it. I've made it. And they didn't know what they were doing. And so we committed to all this staff, all this stock, everything. And the second order wasn't £110,000, it was £11,000. They got it completely wrong. They've got their predictions and forecasting was miles off. So we were kind of, you're missing a zero in your order, I think, folks. Anyway, it absolutely crippled us. We struggled to pay the printers. We struggled to pay quite a few people, and we had to liquidate the business. And it was at a time when my ex-partner was pregnant with my first child, and it was a stressful time. So, but I don't regret that. I learned a lot from the failure of that business as a standalone business, in terms of all your eggs in one basket and cash flow and relying on people's words rather than having contracts written up. So I don't see it as a negative. I actually see it as quite a positive. And I haven't made a lot of those mistakes since, from learning at a tender young age.
So to make it actionable, I guess, for someone listening and who may be in a similar position, let's say that one of our listeners has a business where they're in a similar situation. What kind of advice would you give them, maybe even related to the contract or having a certain deposit or other things, before they either say yes or no to that type of opportunity?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think I see lots of small businesses get caught up in the kind of updraft and excitement of the potential of being taken on by big businesses, whether you're supplying ice cream or any product or service. If you've got a huge kind of mega company with enormous buying power, who've got very seasoned buyers and they've got the contractual side of things really sewn up, you need to you need to calm down, take a deep breath and go, is this going to serve me and my business? And you've got to take the emotion and the excitement out of it. As much as I talk about passion earlier on, there's a thing I've learned actually from another very clever businessman about hot passion and cold passion. And I've learned probably in the last 5 or 6 years about the use of cold passion. So when you look at a contractual situation or taking on a new lease for a property, you need to get heavily into your cold passion, not your hot passion, and see it from a colder, more pragmatic kind of viewpoint. So yeah, don't be blown away by these great offers of rainbows and crocks of gold by big businesses. It has to be sealed and nailed down contractually with a legal team, and if it works for you numbers wise, go for it, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. But there's not too much emotion involved in those decisions. It's a hard-assed business decision. So that would be my advice to people in a similar position.
For your specific situation, if you could have gone back and said no, would you have, or would you have demanded certain changes to the agreement and then gone forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I would have done it very differently. I would have said, let's have a test period. Let's have a contract that, um, let's even roll out rather than 200 stores. Let's try testing it in your top 40 stores. So our exposure is way less, your exposure is way less. And I would have just led it a little bit more, to suit, again, as I said before, my business's purposes. But I was young. I did exactly the opposite of what the advice I've just given to everyone else. I was caught up in the whole, like I said, I was thinking about what car I was going to buy myself, and it was a good lesson.
And then what kind of happened after that for you? So the greeting cards business went away, and you didn't decide to say I'm done with entrepreneurship. You kept going.
This was a huge turning point in life. And to make money, I basically put on some painter and decorator's overalls, and within a week, I had a job painting people's houses and stuff. That was just to bring some cash in. So talk about pivoting. I had to go. Oh, I need a job. Um, Very soon afterwards, we moved from London to a very, very rural part of southern Spain with my 1-year-old daughter strapped in the back of an old Land Rover, and we took off. We bought a property out there, which was very, very cheap, and we had a property in London that we sold. So it was a tiny little village with a population of probably 1,000 people. So that was a completely the beginning of a new chapter of life. We had some money to do this property up, which ended up taking a lot longer than we thought it was going to do. And off the back of that, I started to make things and build things for this house. I come from a very practical family. My dad's always been involved in the building trade, and started to rebuild this place, not really knowing what I was doing, but bought a lot of books and looked at other people doing things and got as much advice as I possibly could. Within a few years, I had a few people coming and knocking on the door saying, "Hey, can you come and do what you've done on your house, but at my house, and we'll pay you X." And very quickly, I started doing small kind of renovation jobs, pretty much for expat people from all over different countries in Europe, in southern Spain. Very simple life. We had water from a borehole. We had solar hot water. It was totally opposite to what we'd experienced before in London.
You're still not your own boss, but like you're fixing people's houses, and what did you decide to do after that in your story?
Well, I did that for quite a few years and moved from job to job. It was a lot of hard work for not huge returns, but it kept us all going. And then I had a phone about probably 4 or 5 years into that journey. I had a phone call from my best friend in the UK, and he said, "Do you want to go off-road motorbiking?" And I said, "What?" Now, as a kid, when I grew up, I used to have off-road motorbikes. We had a big woodland behind the house, and we used to fly around on these old kind of motocross bikes. So I had a little aptitude in riding these things. But so I said, "Okay, I'll come back to the UK and we'll go on a trip." And he went, "No, no, no. There's a company about 4 hours away from you in Spain. The weather's great there. Let's go and do this trip in Spain." So I met up with my friend Barnaby, and we drove up to this other small village 4 hours away, and had 3 amazing days on these kind of off-road enduro motorcycles with another group, going up different tracks and trails and having lunch at different small restaurants in the mountains. It was absolutely great. I had a eureka moment. I've had two of these, and the second one was in Jessica's presence in Carmela's. But the first one was riding these motorbikes. I thought, I want to do this because where I live is more beautiful and more spectacular than where we were doing this trip. I came back to home and sat down. I thought, I'm kind of getting to the end of my tether with the building side of things. How can I put a plan together to set up this small motorcycling? I did. I ended up getting hold of four motorbikes, which I actually brought from the UK because they were a lot cheaper, and built a website and started advertising that I was doing these tours in this area. Bit by bit, I started to get clients, mainly from the UK to begin with. It also coincided, this is getting towards 2008, 2009, and Spain was hit massively by the banking crisis. I mean, it literally, everything was booming, and within a year, everything had completely crashed, and particularly building side of things. So it was lucky timing for me to have this other offshoot of doing motorcycling. So I spent a long time navigating these goat tracks and steep mountain trails, and started to put maps, my own maps together of days that we could run. And within a few years, I got more bikes, and I had groups, really loyal groups of people from all over the world, from New Zealand, from Canada, from the States, all over Europe, particularly Scandinavia, Norwegians and Swedes. But it coincided with me splitting up with my ex, and her and the two kids came back to the UK. So it was a really hard time for me. I couldn't. I just set up this. I was well into this business, and I couldn't just drop it. I had commitments over in Spain, and so I was flying back to the UK to see them every kind of 4 weeks, which was, for a weekend. It was tough. It was heartbreaking. It was hard on the kids. It's hard on me. It's hard on everybody. And that coincided with a trip to Los Angeles with my kids, to stay with Richard and Kirsten, who were in Dallas, then in Altadena, and discovering Carmela's. And that's another great story in itself.
I was curious about for the biking because I kind of went through a similar thing with my businesses, and my business partner is my now was my now ex, and I would when I look back there, that definitely obviously affects timing and what you're going to do with your business and how you do things. And so, do you think if that hadn't happened at that time, would you picture that you would have continued with it longer, or evolved it into something different, or not really sure?
No, no, it was time. It was the it was a beauty and a beast, the biking business, in the fact that it's quite dangerous. I was taking almost professional enduro riders on hard rides, and these guys were way better riders than I was. So, uh, statistically, somewhere down the line, I was going to have an accident. I had quite regular visits to the local hospital with other people that had fallen off and broken bones and hurt themselves. So, this is it's quite an intense, high risk business. It's not scalable, really. The second eureka moment was in your class, Jessica, having being taught how to make fabulous ice cream, and I literally had like a wonderful electric shock run through my body. And that afternoon, I just went, oh, that morning, I just went, this is it. This is the next thing. I can feel it. I was brimming with it. Um, and yeah, we've gone on from there. But just to rewind a little bit, I just took the kids on holiday to see my good friends. They lived, I don't know, half a mile around the corner. And we would go in and buy Carmela's ice cream, and we'd taste this ice. I was tasting this ice cream. I've always enjoyed food. My mum's a fabulous cook, chef, and so we've grown up around great food. And tried Jessica's ice cream, Carmela's ice cream, and it's kind of wow, I've never had anything like this before. Thought, yeah, I need to do this. There's nothing like this in the UK, and there still isn't. It's a strange market over here for ice cream. But I didn't know anything about that then. I just knew that I was going to set up a similar version of Carmela's in the UK, and so yeah, I did a half day ice cream making course at Carmela's in Pasadena, and there was 15 other people, and I waited for everyone else to file out of the door at the end of the class with their pints of ice cream, and then I kind of bent Jessica and Zach's ear, saying, "Hey, I need to know more about this. Can you show me, like, in the back? Can you show me the big pieces of machinery?" And they did. They were really sweet. They kind of took me on a 10-minute tour, and I was full of questions. And then, kind of rather cheekily, I said, "Look, how do you feel about me doing an internship? I just want to come and learn to make ice cream. I don't want any money. I just want to learn how you guys make ice cream." And we worked it out over the next few months, and they received me with open arms, open information, open hearts. I'm still eternally grateful for how you took me on board. So I was still living in Spain when this happened. I flew back to Spain for 3 months, and then over Christmas I flew back to LA and immersed myself in ice cream making. And I would be there at 6:30 in the morning when there was a problem with a machine or something. I just wanted to know how everything worked. I was like a sponge. It was a great time, and learnt the bones, and learnt some figures and some facts and some good business tips as well, and then brought that idea back to Spain. And then I moved about 6 months later, no, a year later, back to the UK, and kind of without any money. And as a result of building up great relationships with a lot of my biking clients, there were quite a few of these guys that were done well in life, done well in business. And a few of them have said to me, if you want to do something when you get back to the UK, let us know. We may be interested in investing. So I have 7 investors, some small, some larger ones, that put the money into getting Brass Monkey ice cream off the ground. So it's been an awesome story, and again, very grateful for these guys, because you can look at a business plan for a startup business, and it all sounds great, but until you start doing it, you don't really know. So they took a big leap of faith in me as a person, and I'm again eternally grateful for those guys.
Yeah, but I'm sure them knowing you and how hard of a worker you are, they knew that when you said you were going to take it seriously and actually do it, that they could trust that, which is a huge deal for them.
Yeah, it's I mean it's there it's we're still going, and we're making progress, and they're they're all in there. So it's 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 a real compliment for those guys to believe and trust in my ideas. And again, it was a plan to begin with. It was a quite comprehensive business plan. Something else that should be mentioned, I think, even if you're super sure about what you think you're going to do, doing a business plan is a really, really valuable idea. It'll never work out as the business plan predicts, but it's a really great exercise in you thinking about all the things that can go right and all the things that can go wrong, crunching some numbers, some cash flow projections, P&L projections, that kind of stuff. It's a really good exercise. If I was an investor, I would demand it from anybody, to be honest.
Yeah, that definitely seems like a good best practice. And it's nice to hear a couple parts of that story. One being just, you know, kind of being able to meet people, being able to network as a result of being an authentic person, and how that is able to help you down the line. Or with Kirsten and Richard, several times in your life, they've kind of been able to be conduits to let your businesses or ideas get to the next level.
Yeah, they've been awesome, and they're both very successful people in their own rights in what they do, and they've always brought a fresh take and a certain amount of wisdom to my exuberance at times, which has been good.
Have you come across naysayers in your different endeavors as you've decided you're going to start an ice cream business or start a greeting card business? Did you have people in your life who discouraged you at points, or
Do you know the big difference between the US and the UK
has
is
it
that
always been
you've
positive?
got a can-do attitude on the whole, and there's way more naysayers in the UK. Sad to say it, but it's just a reality. I've had naysayers all the way through my life, and the more I meet them, the more I take it as a challenge. And it was really made obvious to me when I was a travel photographer, straight out of college. I was going to all these parts of the world taking photographs. People would say, "Oh, you don't want to go to Turkey. It's dangerous. You're going to be kidnapped. You're going to have this happen to you. You're going to have this happen. Or you don't want to go to Morocco. You're going to catch this disease. And their people are terrible." And the more I traveled around the world, the more I realized how, on the whole, people are fantastic and fabulous, and we're all kind of very similar in our needs as human beings. And I learned very quickly to ignore the naysayers. Um, Lots of naysayers. When I went from, my dad was a funny one. Bless him, he's a great guy. He's been incredibly supportive with all my life really. But he could not. I was building things in Spain. He would come out very regularly to help. He was a practical guy. He builds dry stone walls in the UK. He's very talented. And then I'm riding motorbikes. It was all kind of, you know, I guess quite male, like, yeah, you're riding motorbikes and you're making a living. And then I turned around and said, I'm going to make ice cream. And he was kind of, what? And my mum was thrilled because she's into food, and she said, oh, great, we could share ideas. And my dad was like, I can't help you with that. So he wasn't so much of a naysayer. He was just, he didn't quite get it. But yeah, lots of people say you can't do that. But you've just got to go back to your original feelings, your passion, your kind of wisdom in a way, and just brush all that to one side. Fortune favors the brave. I really believe that.
Being in the right mindset has so much to do with being successful as an entrepreneur, because it's that type of stuff, how you are going to react when somebody tells you your idea is terrible and you don't know what you're doing. That moment is kind of everything. And that is all based on how you feel about yourself and how much you believe in yourself. And there's a lot that can chip away at that, and that can be really hard. And I think, like we touched on at the beginning, those are the moments where it's super important to be really kind of like in touch with yourself and your vision, I think, and stay strong to it, even, and kind of block out the chatter of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm way more inclined personally to listen to people that have got something constructive to say. If you get somebody come along and say, "Hey, Phil, this idea about ice cream, it could work, and have you thought about this?" If somebody's there to give you some kind of constructive advice, and I've had that from people that I thought were going to invest and didn't invest, but actually gave me some great advice. There's a few of my investors that have given me really solid advice, but being in a positive way, you know, supportive rather than just going, "You can't do it, you shouldn't do it." You know, nothing changes in the world if you listen to people like that.
And are you still feeling passionate about ice cream?
Yeah, the problem I've had is it's not through lack of delegation skills, but it's through lack of resources in terms of funding to employ lots of people to come and make ice cream. So since the business was going, I've been head ice cream maker. I've had some help here and there, but it's been very difficult to tear myself away from, you know, we incurred a fair bit of debt through COVID, through kind of government backed loans and things, which all need paying back now. So cash flow's been tight is because I've been dealing with everything accounts. I've got a great manager in Brighton, and I've had a fantastic team down there. For me to create some space to get more creative with the future of the business, I need other people in now to help me making ice cream. But I think cash flow is going to be at a point this year where I can bring someone in to teach up and take some of the pressure off me in terms of production. Because during the summer, it's been kind of 6 or 7 days a week, kind of 12-hour days, you know, just cranking those machines. It's been a real bottleneck in the business, but I couldn't see a way out of it. Paying people's wages is you know, a major part of any business expenses, and there is a slightly stubborn part of me that goes, I'll just do it. I'll be quicker and better than everyone else are doing it. But it's not productive if we want to expand the business. So this year is quite a pivotal year in terms of maybe another site coming on board, and training someone up to take some responsibility in the creamery and just take the pressure off my shoulders a little bit.
But I think you touch on a good point, though. I think a lot of entrepreneurs do have that sort of mentality a lot of the time where we know we can do it better than someone else, probably because we are the one who's most passionate and have studied it the most and all the things. But it is a really important piece for growth that is important to note, I guess. Like the relinquishing of control is a big deal and something that you kind of have to come to terms with at some point as an entrepreneur, and be willing to hand the reins of certain things, and maybe know that it's not going to be at the 100% level that you bring, but maybe it's 98, and that's better than that's worth getting all your time back or whatever it is for. So, but it's a really hard thing for entrepreneurs because, like you said, it's not only all the practical factors of the financial side and just the operations and how that fits in, but then also just kind of mentally, emotionally, ego, pride, like we want to kind of hang on to the control a lot of the time.
That's me all over. And I think if you take a step back and look at new businesses and or any growing business, there's definite stages of you have all the passion, all the energy, all the great ideas, all the kind of the gusto to get the business off the ground, and the resilience that you need during the hard times, because it's for the first few years it can be treacherous. But then you get to the business to the next stage where you go, okay, we're turning over X. We need to then expand this in a with a little bit more of a strategic plan in mind, and that's where I'm at with it now, and it's taking it to that next level. And all the knowledge that and all the mistakes I've made over the last 5 or 6 years with this whole new Brass Monkey business enterprise has been invaluable in a way. And lots of the ability to say no to people, the ability to just focus on where you really want to take the next step. Also, the courage to try things, and if it doesn't work out as you feel as it's going to work out, then also the courage to stop doing those things. As I said with the wholesale side of things, I thought that was going to go boom, and I realized very quickly that was working all hours for not a huge amount of return on a wholesale pint of ice cream.
You've had so much experience. You're a serial entrepreneur. You've created a lot of plans. What's the secret to creating a good plan, so that you can go from having an idea to having something that's going to be able to bring you some revenue, or a business that's going to be able to involve other people? What's your approach for plan making? Because that's something I think a lot of people could benefit from.
I think it goes back to that idea of cold passion and hot passion. You need your hot passion to get excited about a seed of an idea. And then that very quickly you need to turn that into cold passion and go, okay, what is this idea? What's the competition? Who's the market? How much can I charge for this? How much does it cost? Have I got any money to start this business? Do I have to borrow money? Is it even possible to borrow any money at the moment? So you then start to, disseminate this original, emotional, passionate idea about something, and break it down. And I think it's okay to go, oh, actually, that might not work. Or go and do some market research, talk to other people in the business. I mean, what was great about coming over to LA and my 6 week stint at Carmela's was talking to the rest of the guys on the team, going, hey, how much did you take last week, and how's that working? Just really delve into the fundamentals, and don't be afraid to ask other business people. I get asked quite a lot by potential new ice cream people, and I'm quite open source with a lot of this stuff. I'm not overly protective, just as Jessica wasn't when I first approached her, and I was that really shifted me in a really positive way in terms of, hey, let's try and help each other out. Numerous people being in touch saying, oh, I quite fancy trying to make ice cream, and what about this, or an organic this business, or something similar. And I like sharing ideas, and because I know that there's a big difference between having an idea and actually putting it into practice. Get cold passionate about your plan making. Just take even a template of a business plan from the internet, and see how that relates to what you're planning on doing, because you'll start to see bottlenecks very quickly in your plans. And then if it's going to be a good idea, then you'll learn or devise systems and plans to overcome those bottlenecks.
One thing, talking about the passion, one thing that stuck with me that I felt resonated a lot was when you were talking about earlier about the kind of those moments where you decided to do a business opportunity. And while we're talking a lot about passion within getting the business going, in some ways your passion, as mine as an entrepreneur, appears to be kind of a passion for the business opportunity. So you mentioned that with the greeting cards. You said it. What was interesting to me about doing it was a better business opportunity than the other thing I was doing before. So that was interesting to me. What feels like a similar theme maybe for a lot of entrepreneurs is this idea that when you kind of have that entrepreneur mindset going all the time, and you're sort of always looking at things as a business opportunity, when you see one that is really intriguing as an actual business opportunity, that's the one that gets the attention and that you tend to gravitate towards. That's how it's been for me. And I think you sort of explained it similarly.
I'm very similar. I knew I was never going to work for anyone else, so I had to have something that was going to excite me as a business opportunity. So yeah, I'm very much like that. I look for the business side of things. However, I do have a creative streak, and I see food as very similar for taking photographs. To be honest, it's turned out to be a wonderfully fun pastime, really. Playing with flavors, and I've really got into food and taste, and I think I've got good taste buds. And the flip side of that is that you're serving an awful. If you're going to have a business that's successful, you're selling a lot of ice cream to lots of people, and just to get the feedback from your clients and customers is so fulfilling. We've just about 6 months ago we did an ice cream made of hay, as in the stuff that horses eat. Oh, I sourced this organic hay. We made infusions, playing around with different strengths and stuff, and we got it nailed. And it was fabulous putting it on our menu board, and we just called it Hey, Hey, Hey. And it drives my staff mad because everybody comes in and goes, "What's Hey, Hey, Hey?" And they say, "It's Hey ice cream." And, just to create, and it's delicious, it's absolutely delicious. And just to create that buzz around something new, something creative, something innovative. And one thing I will say, although I'm business focused and orientated, I won't compromise the creative side of things just to make extra money. And that may be not the smartest way to go in terms of the bottom line at the end of the day, but life's too short for me to kind of sell out in terms of quality and that creative touch. So I will always try and kind of push the envelope in terms of new flavors, using the best ingredients we can get hold of. We charge for it. We're more expensive than anyone else, and it all seems to be working great. And the reviews that we're getting for something like Hey ice cream or black sesame ice cream or some of the odder things that we do, the feedback is great. It really gets that lovely kind of reinforcement loop that makes you feel good at the end of the day.
Doesn't that sound good? Dominic lives on a farm. We should make hay ice cream with your hay.
That sounds delicious.
It's like dried flower. If you think what hay is, it's just a whole collection of dried kind of grasses and flowers, and it's got these caramel flavors and these herby notes. It's really complex, and we sell out really quickly when we have it on.
I would 100% try that if I can't. That'd be the first thing that would catch my eye. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, because it's just like grasses, right? It's just like your rye, or, you can get those good flavors in there. So is there anything else, Phil, that's kind of, as we're wrapping up our conversation today, that you want to make sure that we can hit on?
No, just to reiterate, I'm very, very grateful to be here, to be able to share the story. It's just my journey. Everyone's going to have their own journey, and still haven't got it completely nailed yet. We're still working at it, and it's work in progress. There's been all sorts of obstacles being put in the way, and we seem to be managing to deal with them as they come in, like any small business. And but again, like I mentioned, I think it's the passion you need for when times are hard rather than when times are good. Don't be fearful, people. Go out, get an idea. If you have an idea that you think, "Oh, this could really work," go for it.
It's great advice.
It was great to hear your story, and some of it I didn't know, so that was really fun for me. And yeah, I just really appreciate you being here and talking with us today.
Well, I want to a big special mention to you, Jessica, because without your kindness and your open arms, literally, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. So I'm eternally grateful for you for the opportunity that you helped me with.
That's very nice to hear, and I appreciate it, and I'm glad that it was helpful for you. And I can't wait to one of these days get over to England and try your ice cream. So make sure you have hay on the menu when that happens.
I shall do my best.
Thanks for joining us today. Really was amazing that we were able to meet with Phil and talk about his Hey ice cream. If you want to follow his journey, you can follow him on Instagram at brassmonkey.icecream or on his website, brassmonkeyicecream.com. Thanks for your support of Story of a Startup. Please please subscribe, share with all of your friends, and reach out if you have any questions or if you want to share your startup journey with us.